Hey, what's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Mace. I'm coming to you from Canada, and today we're checking out the Names of Scandinavia Explained. I think it's always interesting to look at the origins of names and name places. Looking at Canada, there's so much, obviously, things that are named after or named by the British, the British Empire. But there's also a lot of Spanish names, especially on the west coast here, because the Spanish explorers were this way. So you'll see like lots of things with a Spanish name to them. There's like the Juan de Fuca Strait and San Jose Bay, and so many places up on the west coast here that have that Spanish influence. We're such a new country in comparison with Scandinavian countries. Like Canada's independence was only 1867, right? So haven't been around that long, really. The Dominion of Canada. Let's get to this. Names of Scandinavia Explained. This should be cool.
In Northern Europe, we have a region of the world known as Scandinavia, which consists primarily of 3 countries. There's a whole conversation for what is and isn't Scandinavian, but that's already been covered. So for now, we're going to look at just the 3 countries that definitely are Scandinavian: Norway, Sweden, and Denmark. Think of this as a big Scandinavian special. Not only are we going to look at how these countries got their names, but also look at how their capital cities got their names, and how a famous thing from each of these countries got their names. This last section is solely here to give me an excuse to talk about Lego. And of course, we're going to be looking at the name for these countries as a whole, Scandinavia. This name is believed to come from the Old Norse Skane, which is the name for the southernmost tip of modern day Sweden. This was initially believed to be an island at first, and perhaps at one point in history
There's probably so many wars and like going back in history, and this particular section maybe was highly contested.
Was an island, so the name is believed in turn to come from this Proto-Germanic word, with the first part of the name being unknown, but the second part being thing on the water, which fits with the island idea. This part of the world was known to the Romans as Scania or Skjolna, and from this one part of Sweden, the name Scandinavia evolved and took over that whole part of the world. Some even feel the name is related to the Norse goddess Skadi, though this is still up for debate. And I might be saying up for debate a few more times in this video. Scandinavia is a seriously ancient part of the world, and a lot of these etymologies aren't too clear to us. I'll do my best to figure out where these names come from, but sometimes we might hit something of an etymological dead end. We've actually done a whole video on the name Norway in the past, but nevertheless no harm in covering it here too. The name Norway relates to its location on the planet, that being in the north, with the name believed to mean North Way, or a way leading to the north, as it was northern to the Anglo-Saxons, with this coming from the Old Norse Norveg, which turned into the Old English Northweg and eventually into North.
Being the way to the north, or the north way, that actually makes sense. Norway. And it's very up north.
Norway. The capital of Norway is the city of Oslo. The city of Oslo has actually gone by a variety of names, it would seem. The current name of Oslo is apparently based on the Old Norse Os, which means estuary/river mouth, referencing the city's location, but Oslo hasn't always been called Oslo. Well, it was initially, and it is again now, but between then and now, the name of the city was changed to Christiania. The original town of Oslo actually burnt down in a fire. King Christian...
Christiania, oh, okay, for King Christian the Fourth.
The Fourth decided to rebuild the town in a new location and rename it after himself. How very humble. But eventually this new location for the town went by the old name of Oslo once again. Perhaps the one thing Norway is most popular for is its beautiful fjords. Though fjords are found across the world, they are perhaps most well known in Norway, and the word itself is Norwegian, coming from an Old Norse word which means inlet/estuary. The most populated country of all 3 Scandinavian countries is Sweden. Now Sweden...
The most what?
Estuary. The most populated country of all 3 Scandinavian countries is Sweden. Now Sweden really doesn't have a clear etymology to us. It seems to be generally agreed upon that...
What is Sweden's population? Because I know Norway's only like 5 million, right?
The name comes from the inhabitants of the land, the Swedes. What's interesting is that the name Sweden as we know it in the English language comes from the Scottish with their words for the name, like Swiffen and Swadne. And funnily enough, it came to the Scottish from the Middle Dutch Sweden. So if Sweden is named after its inhabitants, the Swedes, then how on earth did they get their names? It's believed to come from the Proto-Germanic Swabna, which means free/independent. So I guess Sweden could also be seen as the land of the free too. A name that seems to be somewhat more clear for us to understand is the name of Sweden's capital city, Stockholm. The name is believed to come from a combination of two Swedish words, stocka, which means log/pole, and holm, which means island/islet. So we could say Stockholm means log island. The island part of this name makes sense as the city is placed over islands, but why logs? There's a few ideas as to why it was named after logs, from using logs as markers in the city, the huge amounts of logs and stumps on the oldest islands of the city, to logs blocking ship routes so fees could be implemented. And of course, if we have to look at how a popular Swedish thing got their name, we have to look at the home of flat pack furniture with IKEA. Luckily for us, IKEA isn't some old Norse word, but it's actually an acronym coming from the founder.
It's an acronym of the family name, right?
Founder's name, Ingvar Kamprad, Ilmutjolid, the farm he grew up in, and Argi Unalid, the village he grew up in. And finally, we have the country of Denmark. Like Sweden, the name Denmark comes from the people who inhabited the land, the Danes, and the mark part comes from the Danish mark, which means border, which means it's the land bordered by the Danes. So what about their capital, Copenhagen? Like Stockholm's name, this comes from a compound of two words, but obviously Danish words this time, not Swedish words. In Danish, the city is called Copenhagen, which comes from the Danish Korba, meaning merchant, and Danish haven, which means port, meaning Copenhagen means the merchant's port. And of course, like I said at the start of the video, we have to take a look at a famous Danish thing, which of course has to be a product which is one of the few things I love more than names: Lego. Lego, like Denmark and Copenhagen, is a combination of two Danish words, leggot, as you can, play pretty well with Lego. Trust me. It was just Denmark that was suggested by Dilbert on Patreon, and thanks to their suggestion, they will now be honoured as Name Explained's patron saint of Denmark. If you want to become a Name Explained patron saint, then why not support the channel on Patreon? Just $1 and up earns you the chance to suggest a country or geographical location on the Wednesday patron saint suggestions post for the next patron saint video. Name Explained depends on awesome people like yourself.
So is Scandinavia, it's usually just described as Norway, Sweden, and Denmark. I feel like there was other countries that would be included when a person that's not knowledgeable about it would be asked. Like, I could see people including Finland and Iceland, even though I know they're this is just what a person might posit. It's not necessarily what I'm saying. I have Icelandic heritage, but let's see here. We want to look at Scandinavia, region in Europe. I just want to take a quick little refresher. Why is it giving me like a Chinese site? Let's see. Scandinavia, sub-region of Northern Europe with strong historical, cultural, and linguistic ties between its constituent peoples. Yeah, this one does say most commonly referring to Denmark, Norway, and Sweden. You can also refer to the Scandinavian peninsula, which excludes Denmark but includes a part of northern Finland. Right. Scandinavia is sometimes used as a synonym for Nordic countries. Right, the Nordics. Iceland and the Faroe Islands are sometimes included in Scandinavia for their ethno-linguistic relations with Sweden, Denmark, and Norway. While Finland differs from the other Nordic countries in this respect, some authors call it Scandinavian due to its economic and cultural similarities. Geography of the region is varied, from the Norwegian fjords in the west to the Scandinavian mountains covering parts of Norway and Sweden, to the low and flat areas of Denmark. What makes cycling so easy? And the composition thing here includes Denmark, Norway, Sweden, Faroe Islands, Finland, Iceland, and even Greenland, etc. Interesting. And then when I think of Canada, I believe it's a First Nations word. Let's see. Origin. I think it's a First Nations Canada. The name Canada originates from the Huron Iroquois word Canada, meaning village or settlement. In 1535, French explorer Jacques Cartier used the term when Aboriginal guides who were familiar with the area told him about the location of the village of Stadacona, which is now the site of Quebec City. Over time, the name Canada was applied to a much larger area north of the St. Lawrence. But if we just look at Vancouver Island on a map, let's see here. you'll see it's interesting always looking at names. Galliano Island, Salt Spring, Gabriola. But then you get more like English names on this side. Cassidy, Ladysmith, Parksville. But we have Lasqueti and Texada, Hornby, Denman, Cortez Island, right? Quadra, Hernando Island, Sonora, Thurlow, Hardwick. Interesting stuff. Very cool looking at that, I think. All right, see you guys on the next one. Peace.